Welcome to our review on alloys. First thing we need to know is the definition for what an alloy actually is. So when we're talking about an alloy, we are talking about a mixture of two or more elements where at least one is a metal. So make sure you know that definition because they used to ask it as a common question. There are 5 alloys that you need to be aware of: steel, solder, brass, bronze and duralumin. So if we go through each one in turn, we'll have a look at the main metal involved and its uses. So steel, first of all, the main metal is iron, and this is the one we're generally using in buildings and cars and so forth. Solder, which is made of tin and copper as their main metals, are used for joining electrical components and joining copper pipes in heating systems, for example. Brass is copper and zinc, and this is used in musical instruments and coins. Bronze, copper and tin, used in bells and ship propellers. And then duralumin is copper and aluminium, and that's generally used in aircraft parts. If we look in a bit more detail at a couple of these then, the first one we're going to look at is solder. Now solder actually melts at a relatively low temperature there of 227 degrees Celsius. Now that's important because when we're using solder to join electrical components, then it's not hot enough to actually cause them damage as it joins them together. Because it melts at those low temperatures, then it's a liquid, so it's going to flow into all of those gaps to fill them before it solidifies, so we can have good conduction of our electricity. And of course the key part there, it conducts electricity, which is kind of important when we're talking about something that's joining wires in a circuit together. The second alloy we're going to look at in a bit more detail is brass. So if we consider what pure copper looks like, you can see in the bottom left is a diagram. So pure copper is made of only copper atoms, as the name suggests, and all those copper atoms are the same size, which means that they will slide over each other very easily. So that makes copper relatively soft as a metal. When we make our alloy, we're mixing in some zinc there, which is a different sized atom to the copper. Now, as a result of that, what we end up with is something that's more difficult to bend. So it's going to prevent the copper atoms from sliding over each other so readily. Now, brass has a few key properties. Firstly, it's a good conductor of electricity. Secondly, it's strong for the reasons we've just discussed. And it will also resist corrosion, so it makes it nice and long lasting. The last alloy we're going to look at is bronze. Now, key thing about bronze is it's corrosion resistant and is stronger and harder than copper on its own. Now we use this in bells and propellers. Obviously in a bell you don't want something that's going to get bent out of shape really easily or corrode. If you consider we have bells in these big bell towers which actually aren't that secured from the elements in all cases, you don't want to have to repeatedly replace the bells. And if we consider the propellers on ships, they're submerged in salt water, so it needs to be corrosion resistant to last. Hopefully at the end of this video you can now recall the names of 5 alloys and their compositions. You can describe how the properties of alloys relate to their uses, and also when given a table of information about alloys, be able to analyse which one would be the best for a given purpose and explain why in your answer.